Appropriate balancing act. Is that all right?
Well, mate, the way that this works is we're already recording, so I'll just snip it as and when.
Cool.
But yeah, let's get rolling. How are you doing?
I'm okay, mate. Yeah, enjoyed our conversation last week, our inaugural conversation. Not an inaugural conversation, we've spoken before. It wasn't like a blind date podcast thing. Yeah, it was good. How are you?
I had a rough week last week, I'll be honest. And I think it's actually interesting that when you sent me the email suggesting the topic for today, it's almost like spiritual warfare gets sent in order that you can speak from recent experience. Yeah, I had a shocker last week. It was I just felt so low all the time. It was really hard to kind of get my mojo. And newborn, 2 toddlers, tired wife, very stressful job. You know, most people give you they'd let you off for, you feel like you've got an excuse, but something just wasn't clicking, just wasn't firing. And even my boss came to me and was just like, you seem really flat, mate, and you've been dropping the ball in these these areas. How can I help? Which is great, in terms of leadership and his kindness and his mercy, really. And just kind of, he's a very busy man, and he just said, look, how can I help? I can give you some time. And the thing that helped in the end was having no strife at home. Mm-hmm. Not that there was particularly anything, but just making sure that everything is okay at home. That I come back and my relationship with my wife's great. I know that I'm doing right by my kids. It's a brick at a time. You lay a brick a day with kids, and they need quantity time, not quality. They need quality time, obviously, but actually, you can't swap the one for the other. You've got to be there. And I think that will tie into our conversation today as well.
We had that as well, actually. Yeah. Like we were trying to get everything in tonight to do, and tomorrow I'm going away for work. And I was like, well, we need to do shopping because it's a Monday. We've run out of food. I normally go shopping on Monday night.
Want to gather a responsibility in 2022.
Yeah, it's like
credit card, Lidl.
It's like finish work, help look after the kids while Sophie gets dinner ready, try and tidy the room, clean up, get out and we were like, right, let's not shop for a whole week. This is silly, because Judah was really craving some time with me. I was like, okay, so let's just do a shorter shop for like 3 or 4 days, and then you can spend a bit more time with Judah, you can do your shopping and then do the podcast. It's like, sometimes you just got to make those decisions where it's like, let's just go a bit easier on ourselves so you can have a bit more time, because I'm away for 2 days and he'll feel that stuff. So you're so right.
God bless your wife for being able to just say that, I mean, my wife's the same, but it really makes a huge difference when you help me can just be like, it's okay if you need this, do it. She's an amazing woman anyway. I haven't got to know her that much, recently. We only just moved to your church, but yeah, you've got a great wife, man.
Yeah, well, I know of yours too. So when they sort of see something, you're always trying to sort of steamroller and get everything done, task list, She can see the bigger benefit. Women are good at
steamroller.
Women are good at that. So the kind of thing I sent you by email was pretty much along the lines of, what does it mean to be a man in church? What are the things churches do, perhaps in the UK, because that's our context? What are the things that discourage, a masculine expression of the faith?
Yeah.
What are the things that encourage it and give it life? So I thought that would be a good thing to talk about.
It's just like, hey, Ben.
Yeah.
Here's a hose. Drink from a fire hose, It's just like, here's so much that we could talk about. No, I love that we've got that shared hobby of drinking from fire hoses. That's brilliant. That's where to start. Masculinity, church. Those two Yeah, I lost you a little bit about it as well, mate. Great. Hey, episode 2, still low tech. Good. I love it. Yeah, masculinity in the church, they are not. That's not bread and butter, to be honest, is it? It's not ham and cheese. They're not two things that we put together. I think there is. Well, first thing I'll say, first thing I would lay out on the table, I'd love to hear your thoughts, is that this isn't necessarily our fault in terms of we didn't create this problem. This is a huge snowball. It's continuing to go down a very, very steep hill. I don't know if the end is in sight. But we still have a responsibility. I think that's something that long-term viewers of this podcast will hopefully pick up from us, that even if something isn't necessarily our direct fault, we both understand that God's command to us is to step up and take responsibility wisely where we can. So it doesn't really matter that masculinity is failing on our watch. It shouldn't really surprise us that society has absolutely no clue what's going on. In every which direction you look, there are good threads of masculinity. There's a glimmer, because we're all made in the image of God, and so good things can come out either by accident or because genuinely we're made in the image of God, and because sometimes we get it right. At the same time, you're just seeing catastrophic error, heresy, pain, tragedy. It's tough to look at sometimes. I mean, my initial thought would be that the church of masculinity are, and what I presume you mean by modern expression of the church is kind of Sunday mornings, Church of England, evangelical, Elim, whatever, modern British church. Is that the place where you would go, either if you were a young man, a clueless orphan, spiritually or actually? Is that where you would go? Second thing, is the church the place that is demonstrating, depicting, and showcasing good masculinity? My gut feeling is absolutely not. At the moment, absolutely not.
Yeah, no, masculinity, it's in terms that you're right to sort of draw that parallel of what society talking about masculinity, and how does the church reflect what society talks about or thinks about it? Because obviously masculinity is not really, we've moved on, society's moved on. We're more enlightened now. We're, gender fluid. Masculinity is barely a word that gets mentioned. If it does get mentioned, generally it's talked about toxic masculinity, isn't it? So society is almost the idea of talking about what a man is. Well, I do see stuff. I do see a lot. What I do see a development in, that maybe there is positive in here, is the idea that that men can be vulnerable. I do see that now and again as a secular thing. Men can cry, men can have emotions, men can feel things strongly, And actually, I don't think that's not a bad thing, because I think men definitely need to be given permission. The masculinity is there's a lot of things to masculinity, but often men do need to be given permission to express their emotions and so on. So there's some positive things in society you see, but generally speaking, we don't really talk about what it means to be a man. I grew up in, for a bit of context, I suppose, about how I think about this, because I think it's easier to think about, first of all, what in the church sort of discourages masculinity and an expression of the faith in that way. I grew up in kind of more charismatic type evangelical churches. So some of the things that one of the typical.
And Tom's gone.
Lost me, didn't you?
I had you up until one of, you grew up in the church.
I might move down to a more reliable room for signal. Yeah, I was just saying I grew up in a charismatic church, and music's a big thing. And one of the things you'd find is, and people commented on it quite often, is like worship songs about God that sounded like they could be about, you know, a girl, that sort of thing. I think obviously worship's such a big. Oh, there's a creaky door for you. WD-40 out. So that was a big one. So I think the way that we do worship or write worship songs, I think often, you know, that sound like a love song. That's a big one. Yeah. That's one that encourages men. And that's where I think, on the flip side, I think things like a robust inclusion of the Psalms within our worship is.
Yeah, we've spoken about that, haven't we? Because that Psalm song did actually go ahead in the end. We had two.
Oh yeah.
A friend of mine, Tim, and a friend, Tim's brother-in-law, Stephen. They both came along, and just really liberating moment where Stephen actually made himself quite vulnerable. So, like, classic Scottish bloke, he kind of made a joke of his insecurity that he couldn't sing. And I was just like, to be honest, mate, I really don't think mine's. You know, it'd be great if we could all have singing lessons and all learn to sing, and that would be great. You know, maybe that's something I thought about getting in the future is, you know, a singing coach who I trust, who can actually help me glorify God even more with my voice. But I just said to him, "Look, I really don't mind." And he was like, and when we were singing, I just let it out. And I was like, I'm going to demonstrate with my actions that I care far more about glorifying God with the Psalms, with my voice, looking around like an awkward schoolboy, being like, you got that out of note. And maybe we were out of key, but I tell you, it was glorious. It was glorious. It was glorious off-note psalm singing. And to be honest, I remember a quote from C.S. Lewis. He said there are a few things that he finds more glorious to hear than the laughter of men. Just the barrel laughter, you know, belly laughing of men in each other's company. And I would go one further. I would say one of the most beautiful things, and I've got to be careful, I've got to qualify. If I say, I think men do this really well, I do not at all ever mean that women can't do, you know, right, the equivalent very well. Okay. You've always got to make that qualification. And it's fair enough, but, you know, I think one of the most glorious things that I can listen to is a choir of men singing their hearts out. And I think it's interesting that our conversation about masculinity and Christianity is immediately touched on an act of worship. So I'm big on this. Worship is actually just service to the King. It's oriented in everything you do, your whole life. Sunday is not for worship, it's for rest. But there is an act of worship. We are worshipping God in a particular way when we sing. It's really interesting that we touched upon that first, that one thing that the church does do is sing. We're deficient in our masculinity because we're not incorporating a masculine element into modern worship. It's almost like you know, you can bang the drum all day about feminized church and feminized worship. People have heard it all before. But there is a dysfunction and almost it's almost like searching for the word here, but like the church is disfigured because it's almost grown too much in one direction, and we need to keep that. What we actually also need is we need a balanced growth in another areas. This idea of, well, is God just or is he merciful? He's both. You know, it is a just and good thing to put away a murderer with the death penalty, probably before sundown. If it's absolutely obvious, yeah, before God, before men, he murdered, he or she murdered. That's a just and good thing. And actually it is the merciful thing to do. And church is constantly, at the moment, jerking away from glorifying both aspects of God's character, which we reflect, which at first seem contradictory. Actually, they're just paradoxes. And God unifies all paradoxes. You know, he can be just and he can be merciful at the same time. And he can unite all of it within his character and within his being. So we need more female worship. Yeah, Yeah, we do. And we actually need a lot of masculine worship as well. But more than anything else, we need a proper understanding of what worship is, because if we're all just fighting over the same real estate that is a 1 hour slot on a Sunday morning, well, we need more male songs. And I'm like, well, hang on, mate, we've got some songs and we need to have an inclusive environment for all people in the church. We need to have some songs that the kids will enjoy as well. Maybe we should sing the hymns from 60 years ago that Gladys at the back, who can barely hear, maybe that, she's got a song that she really, connects with and she remembers. We should be the people of diversity and inclusion. This is what picks me off working in schools. It's the people who spit on the name of God are the ones who are pushing this fake counterfeit diversity and inclusion. So the reason why I'm trying not to go down a rabbit hole, but this is such a big topic, and the topic of masculinity for me necessarily at the minute has to be one that is not combative, or rather is combative against the right enemy. Women aren't our enemy. So much of the manosphere is taking swings at women and feminists. I'm like, that's easy. It's really, really easy. Taking on feminism, like, that's an easy target. Why don't you take on like enemies and build that alternative, that glorious alternative? We'd actually, when you recognise that feminism and the suffragette movement, I mean, feminism less so, but the suffragette movement was absolutely a response against Enlightenment, boorish, ungodly views of masculinity. From 1600 through to the 1900s, we had this view of women that was totally unbiblical. And so the church isn't going to step up and start smashing idols left, right, and centre, and not be precious about which idols. Oh, well, that idol's been around for 500 years. We've got to be really careful, put on the silk gloves around that one and be gentle. No, I'm taking a baseball bat to it because it's wrong. And the problem is we've either got little weeds or we've got whopping great trees of weeds. We've got really, really deep roots, which our ancestors haven't ripped out. So we're dealing with a despicable landscape where there is genuine persecution. I would use that word that strongly, persecution of boys and men by a misandrist culture in the West. Yet you've also got a very misogynistic strain in the West. So no, there isn't this either or. And again, I suppose part of the Church Fathers podcast is trying to, literally get on our wellies and wade into this pool and just be like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. This is the right one, principle, and let's build it from there,
Yeah. Well, one thing, I'll tell a little bit of my story with the Psalms, and I wanted to ask you as well, how do you incorporate the Psalms into your life and your rhythms in the family or your own life and things like that? But one thing, sometimes certain practices of certain churches that are very different to my own tradition have challenged me in my faith and encouraged me in my faith. So a few years ago, my wife was reading a book by someone who, bit of a tangent, but she was a academic, she was lesbian, she came to Christ and kind of lived a chaste life. But one of the things that stuck out for me, she went to a church, an Orthodox Presbyterian church in America. And so part of her book, a small part of it, was talking about the way they worship. So they are one of the Presbyterian groups that I believe it's called the regulative principle. Anyway, they basically just use the Psalms in their worship, I believe. I think I've got that right. I think there might be some other stuff about not using instruments, all this kind of stuff. And I remember reading it and going, what on earth is going on? Like, I've grown up in a charismatic evangelical church, lots of songs about the Holy Spirit, loads of
smoke machines as well.
And my dad's writing a book on Jesus people. There's the whole exploded like that kind of vineyard and stuff, America, and just worship and music, and it's just such a big part of sort of that kind of evangelical scene. So I remember reading this and being like, what on earth is going on? This is absolutely crazy. And then I think chatting to Sophie about it, she kind of raised a question, well, what if you almost sort of quite challenging me to sort of dig deeper into why do they worship that way. But it was a really good challenge for me to go, well, what is it? What's the positive reason that they only worship that way? And so it was one of the many things that sort of got me digging into the Psalms more. And then what I find really, really helpful, and I ought to do this more, but it's such a brilliant thing when I do it, is getting a Psalm and learning it. Just, learning it and then being able to kind of recite it at different times. And I think I started off with the boys when they were younger. I can't remember the number of the Psalm, but I lift my eyes up to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. And it's a good one to kind of speak over them at nighttime, at bedtime.
Yeah.
Because it's got all the, Lord, watch over you, watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. That's how it ends. And kind of learning the Psalms, so they kind of seep into your consciousness, and then at different times in your life, whether it's the kids' bedtime or some other moment, that you're able to call them to mind. Now, being honest, I've only got probably a small number that I can actually do that with. Probably Psalm 23 is another. There's not many I could do that with yet at the minute. And then in Lent last year, I was it was that cry of Jesus from the cross. From it's in the 20s as well. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? Because I wanted to reflect on Christ is there on the cross, and he is this is quite a, initially when you hear what Christ says on the cross, you kind of have to you just kind of scratching your beard, and then you realize that he's probably got the whole psalm in mind when he's recited something. So that was what I did during Lent last year. So I found such a richness and encouragement in my faith in learning the Psalms, and I suppose truly like meditating on the Psalms is kind of, you have to kind of learn it to meditate on it. Like, unless you're carrying your Bible around with you all the time and you dip into it, that's okay as well. But it does something, it seeps into your being. When you do,
memorizing something there is power in that. I remember Peter Hitchens on Question Time, they'd asked the question, can you recite some poetry? It's a classic but easily found. Basically every other panelist tried to fob them off or change the question or just ignored it or whatever. And then Peter Hitchens recited a piece of very quite simple poetry. He got an amazing, almost a standing ovation, credit to him. But he made the point that he'd learned a lot of poetry and hymns. He made a point to emphasize that furnished his mind with beauty. And that phrase has stuck with me, that when we remember things, it's almost like we etch them into our being. And I can't help but draw the parallel between this idea of the body, the mind, and the soul being separate and yet unified, like the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, separate and yet ultimately unified. And this concept of holistic, separate yet together, separate yet unified, holistic unity of things like masculinity, of things like femininity, of things like justice and mercy. But we're talking about masculinity. So the idea, for instance, that if you go through the Psalms, the Psalms, I don't know if it's exactly in the middle of the scriptures, but it's almost like the spine of God's word. And that's poetic for me, that songs that you would sing, worship. Again, we need another word in the English language for what, I believe it's hadab or habad in Hebrew, the idea of just total devotion of being worship. And it's like we don't have enough words for love in English, in Greek we've got numerous. But anyway, sung worship, what most Christians would understand as a Sunday morning service, that sort of singing God, glorifying him with song. And I am by no means a psalmoniist. I believe that God gave us minds and tongues to glorify him with our own creations, be they song, be they picture. But you're going through the Psalms, and I would struggle find a human experience or a human emotion that can't be appropriately reflected and explored and expressed. You know, I mean, it's fascinating for me that in so many languages, in Hebrew and in English, we talk about, you know, of a person. You know, if you say someone's got they're really tough, but it's also the idea that when we're bringing something from deep within us, we're literally bringing it up from our belly, you know. And there's just something there that I can't quite put my finger on that I experienced with my father's passing in January. And there are two songs. It was Gabriel's Oboe from The Mission and Local Hero, Coming Home or something.
Yeah.
And both of those songs, I just tear up now listening to them.
Yeah.
But I just started to reflect, and still do reflect, on the idea of music and song in a way that I can express my emotions either corporately with other men, like I did with Tim and Steve, you know, and you and other brothers and sisters and little ones on Sunday morning. Yeah. Even also alone, the songs that have actually, you know, it's interesting you raise the psalm because contemporary versions of the psalm. There's a guy, Brian Selvey, over in Utah, and My Soul Among Lions from Indiana, I want to say. And they've both put psalms into sort of contemporary style, which really suits me. Shoot me now, you know, they really do speak to me. But I can have them on, I can sing along with them. Far more than just your average pop song. They just resonate. Probably that's the word. You know, literally the innermost being within me. It starts to resonate like the walls of a cathedral when an organ's really, you know, thrumming away. And the thread I want to take from that is that it's very, very difficult to separate aspects of masculinity. You know, it's like taking a muscle and wanting to have the separate threads. You need them together. They need to be part of a greater whole in order to function. You know, let's use the Psalms as an expression of masculinity. Well, is a man to be warlike? Yeah. All the time? No. Is a man to be gentle? Yeah. All the time? Kind of, yeah. There are times where maybe not, you know. Nasty person confronting you in the street and he's threatening your wife, like, that's probably not the time to be gentle. That's the time where you get your war horse out and you really put your life on the line, you know. And you see it in like the manosphere, and you see it in all sorts of movements where one aspect has been kind of swollen and inflated at the expense of others. Well, you know, the man's got to be the defender. Yes and amen, but I'm so much more than that. I am a man. And that's like, you know, if you had a visual metaphor of a man, it's almost like a bottomless well compared to just defender. You know, there's all of these aspects that need to come out.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about. Well, I think it was maybe my mind just going off on the tangent that I was working on, but you're talking about that integrated thing of body, mind, and soul, and that was one of the things in my mind as I thought about our conversation as well, was the idea of just how we use our bodies in terms of how we connect with God or the scriptures and things like that. And obviously the Psalms, a lot of the Psalms were written, some of them were written for pilgrimage, you know, to Jerusalem for whatever feast it would be.
Yeah.
And it just made me think, and I don't think this isn't exclusively masculine, but there is an element of masculinity within what I want to talk about that I think comes out in that I think as men, we are in a different way to women drawn to adventure and courage, you know, courageous adventure, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of the idea of sort of pilgrimage, or occasionally I'll go out and I love just walking up a hill, just walking up any hill, because there's a little bit of challenge in it physically. I like that. when I get to the top, there's a beautiful view that gives me this different perspective on things. And so I find it such a good time to pray as I'm moving. It's like I have the best. I mean, we're having a good conversation now, but I don't know about some people or friends or some or just in life. The best conversations I can often have is kind of walking side by side with someone.
Yeah, you haven't got a destination. You've got a few hours ahead of you. There's no stress, no rush. You've had a nice lunch.
Just the movement. There's something that goes on. I'm sure scientists will talk about the movement of your body. So what I was going to talk about was just this idea of pilgrimage. So, like, it's not something that we talk about maybe much in evangelical church. This idea of pilgrimage, where people would set off to a particular, holy destination or wherever it might be, or go on a path many others have traveled before and pray, and maybe even on parts of that walk they might take off their sandals and walk barefoot for a period of time. Again, these kind of like ascetic practices, but things that kind of embody sort of things that you're wanting to meditate on. So going to worship or walking, with your bare feet, maybe the pain of doing that maybe on a stony path, kind of reminding you of perhaps Christ going to the cross. There's lots of different pictures and visuals and images, and it kind of made me think we should do it sometime. Perhaps we should go out with a bunch of guys and we should have a few psalms and we should do some walk up some hills, and we should do like reflections as we go, or with some things. I think that'd be really good. But I think so. Again, I don't think it's explicitly masculine, because I think women pilgrimage is for everybody. Like doing something physical where you can pray and you can reflect on God and worship Him is not a masculine thing. But the sense of adventure and courage and doing something challenging, I think again is for men and women. But there's something slightly different about how men are drawn to that kind of challenge and adventure and courageousness and stuff.
Well, I know you and I have spoken before about the idea of maybe some churches have gone too far in the other direction. They've just thrown an order of service out the window. Do you think actually, and even as a teacher, if I've got like 45 minutes of lesson time, if I have routines and I keep time and I make sure that we tick stuff off as we go, we get stuff done. We kind of touch on a number of things as we go, that if someone is just riffing at the front, praying for 8 minutes, which is a warm up in some charismatic churches, all manner of things get missed out because that one person that's praying perhaps isn't reflecting on penitence, or as you say, asceticism, and its right place in the Christian life. And again, we just keep coming back to, is it the one or the many? Is it the individual? Is it the group? Is it the order of service? Or is it the freedom? And Christ is the answer there. He is both. And so it's almost numerous churches which, let's be honest, are dead. They're in rigor mortis and we're just waiting for them to really fall over into the grave that God's got prepared for them. The order of the service is the most important thing. You would never break it. You wouldn't dare speak in tongues. You wouldn't dare interrupt what's going on and maybe say, hang on, God's given me a word for someone here. And it's that constant, it's not really a conflict or a battle. It's just this growing in maturity that we can hold two things next to one another and actually start to intertwine them, so that they never lose their uniqueness, but actually they are unified. And I think order of service is a wonderful idea to make sure that we are reflecting on as many things as possible. And actually the idea of liturgy and a feast calendar. I'm working very, very slowly on getting a feast calendar done so that we can redeem the calendar and redeem the time, so that different times of the year, I'm looking out my window, it was dark at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
There are aspects of life, creation, God's character, that are imposed upon me. Unless I'm blind and stressed and running the rat race with, the blinders on, that I don't have any time or margin to sit and reflect. I love, hills as well. And And one of the things that I've reflected on recently is the importance of sometimes putting yourself in a physical posture to receive from God and to climb a mountain. Not because he's there, he was with you the whole time.
Yeah.
But you climb that mountain to get that sense of perspective. Again, we're not tick box Christians. It's not climb the mountain, God will be there, plus 30 experience points. Now he will speak to you. It's more that, God can speak to an Iranian woman that's currently languishing in prison, fighting against a horrible regime, and she's got no mountain to climb, and yet the Holy Spirit's there. So, God forbid we ever try and put fences around God, but also not put fences around how he wants us to behave towards him. At the same time, not be libertines, i.e. there are no rules, there is no regulation, there is no law, you just do what you want. And sadly, at the moment, the Christianity among the younger generations, the forward-thinking generations, I don't see many legalists. I see lots of libertines, libertinists.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So that aspect of masculinity that we're touching on, I'm so fascinated that it went to worship straight away, because I wouldn't have guessed that, but it's so important. The life of a man has to be a worshipful life. And we talk about demoralized men, demoralized boys. Yeah, fathers are important. Fathers are really, really important. More than anything else, it's not being in submission to something. Now, the Muslims get this wrong. I will go down on paper as saying that the Muslims get this wrong because they only understand power, the power religion, like nationalism. Submission, correctly understood, literally means under a mission. And there is hierarchy in the kingdom of heaven, but we understand that the way, and we give respect and honor to our superiors. Christ is absolutely my superior. But I can rest assured knowing that the model of leadership and the model of hierarchy in the kingdom of heaven is one of ultimate service, that those at the top serve those below them. So it's this reciprocal, yes, you honor me, but I honor you. Well, which comes first? Well, it's not quite chicken and egg. Leader should probably be the one serving first and trust God to bring the increase. But submission, correctly understood, being under a mission, that my mission fits into the larger mission play of what God's doing. And if I've got a North Star to hitch myself to, I know where I'm going and I know what part I've got to play. I had a great dad, and I've met yours, and he's I can only speak from what I've met. It's the way he treated me, the way he spoke to me. You just genuinely kind fathers when you meet them. So I don't have a physical dad on earth anymore. That doesn't make me fatherless, because I was fathered. And I'm not an orphan, because I've obviously still got my mother. But every little boy will tell you when they grow up just how important a dad was or would have been if they'd had one. And other men can step in. They can step in and they can provide that fatherly role. So I'm not one of the articles I thought initially about reading out to you and seeing what you thought was this fairly vanilla article about just how awful fatherlessness is in society, and I don't think either of us would disagree at all. My concern is that when the focus is upon the father, as it should be, if it becomes you didn't have a dad, son, so there's not really much we can do for you, rather than equipping you with the ultimate father and giving you access to a greater mission which you can, as a young man, a young woman, remember the qualification I made at the beginning, but we're talking about boys here. You can commit yourself to that greater mission, and you know that you've got a part to play, and you can look to the future. You can have that future orientation, forward looking. Even if that's where I started, my Father in heaven can make all things new. And he can take whatever brokenness and scars and mistakes, he can weave that because he's the grand weaver. And he can create a beautiful tapestry from the pain and the mistakes and the tragedy and the what could have beens and the. So for me, there has to be an acknowledgement that fathers are beyond critical. There has to be, though, it has to be accompanied by hope, not just of know your true father, be fathered by other men in the church. That's another podcast episode of its own. You know, how can, I mean, you're a bit older than me. I'm late 20s, you're late 30s. Yeah. We're not yet totally grey haired, though we're both getting a little bit.
I'm going away, mate.
Yeah. You know, there's generations above us in the church who are in a different season of life, and they've got opportunities and possibilities to be stepping in different ways as fathers and uncles and whatever within the church body. But you mentioned adventure. I know what you mean. I would push back against that word and say, actually, that for me is a worldly counterfeit for mission. And I think a man needs a mission. Mm-hmm. And a man cannot find his ultimate mission in and of himself. You know, one of the books that brought me to faith, deep faith, was, of all things, Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. And I can't read that book now. I really struggle to read that book, and I have so many questions for John Eldridge. But the main point that he was hitting on, God bless that man for being obedient to whatever he felt God was calling at the time. He really spoke to me with words and the point he was making. But the main point that he got across to me was this idea that a man needs a mission. And I would preface that by saying there is a greater mission. You know, if you use the analogy, we've been born into a world at war, and we can respond in all manner of ways. But one of the ways that we can respond a good way is to figure out what's going on and get our marching orders and crack on with whatever mission we've been given at the moment. I feel my mission is more of a take and hold. I've literally been given an outpost, and I keep asking God, you know, next, stay. Where next? Put down roots. And I'm just thinking, where next? Love your wife. Love your kids. Have some more. Love them. Love your wife some more. Where next? I'm getting hot feet all the time. It's just, and God's like, put down roots. Make some friends. Plant a garden. You know, and it's infuriating because the Holy Spirit's just saying, stay. Just abide in that place. And I've spoken for a while. So
no, that's right. I don't know if I've got anything to add right now on that. But I agree. I think that idea of mission. I think one of the things that I sometimes trip up against is this idea that I need to find out. I think again, no, I won't go down that rabbit hole. Is that I need to find uniquely meant to be doing, and I want it to be really specific.
Yeah.
Sometimes God can do that, but we already kind of know what he wants us to do. Like there's so much we want to know uniquely what we're called to do, but there's so much that he's told us that we are to do anyway.
Yeah.
We've kind of enough to be getting on whilst we're still waiting to hear.
That kind of touches on the point I was making about the order of service earlier, is that actually if we have routine in our thinking, in our actions, and we pick off boxes. You know, you and I both have days where we're just like, do you want to get out of bed? Do you want to go to work? Do you want to speak to the wife? Don't want to play with the kids? I really just want to be I'm just that exhausted. I'm just that stressed. And it's a sinful, don't misunderstand me. We laugh at ourselves, but we know it's sin. And so we, Lord willing, put that sin to death. And yet, the thing that sometimes really does help me, which are some of these kind of manosphere gurus and stuff, right, is this idea of just having like a pirate map in the morning. Like you just get up and you do this and you do this and you do this, and you just allow habit, the power of habit and routine to get through a bunch of stuff that you know is good for you for those times when you really don't want to do it. Same thing. If we have routines, we understand implicitly the comprehensive demand that God has for us as men. And we know we have enough time and margin in our life to just sit down, sharpen iron, one against another, against ourselves, and just be like, am I doing okay in this area? Am I doing okay in this area? What could I be doing better? And that's critical. That's absolutely critical to being able to take actions forward in the right direction. The world, these kind of performance experts, in the corporate world, there's people whose entire careers are built off of the most basic of ideas, which is have a 3-day plan. Hell, have a 3-hour plan, and then do another 3-hour plan, and then have a 3-week plan. And it's all about threes and 3-year plan. And then you just think, yeah, okay, drink vegetables, eat vegetables, drink vegetables, drink water, eat vegetables, maybe have a multivitamin, get some fish oil, brush your teeth, floss your teeth. These are all things that, you could just have routinized as part of the morning routine. You think, okay, if it works there, is it perhaps a good idea that I've just got little hip-hop activities that I do on a daily basis? My heart is in them. It's for those days where I just don't want to do anything. And I think you make an excellent point. That's a great point actually for me, and that's probably why I've responded so vigorously to it. That the idea of routinizing and having little checkpoints, if you will, in the day. There's a guy, Glenn Sunshine, who runs a theology podcast, made a point once about the monasteries. For all of their followers, a day was designed around calls to prayer. So again, redeem the time. How'd you do that? Well, you literally build a different framework of time. It's not necessarily the 9 a.m. meeting and then the 12 p.m., whatever. But no, we've got morning prayer. We've got this prayer. We've got this prayer. We've got this prayer. And the whole of the day and then the whole of the year was framed around something different, something greater. I'd like you to start touching upon the point of demoralized men, because when I think about the idea of the monk calendar, the way that they built their days, if you will, at the monastery, in light of the week, in light of the month, in light of the year, in light of the greater framework of not just the saint days, not just Christmas, not just Easter, also the greater narrative and the greater story, the song really that God is telling, God is singing. And they were happy to, go along that journey one day, one step at a time in light of that bigger framework. And we've touched on mission. Where does demoralization fall in? Because that was a really interesting and very, very poignant word that you used in your pre-Zoom message to me, which it stuck out to me actually. What to hear what you got to say on it.
In terms of how men are discouraged?
Whatever. I mean, we can't escape the idea that men are demoralized today. Men in the church and out.
Yeah. You said something. One thing I can you said something. I'm trying to join some dots in my brain. Yeah. So you said something that interested me earlier and made me think, which was when you were talking about fathering, and you kind of broadened it out from, or you didn't say these words, but what I was thinking of is let's we can't make an idol of having a father. You didn't say this, but this is what I was thinking, because some people have never had fathers. Some people have lost their fathers, and we want people to know their Father in heaven. And then it got me thinking about read a book called Raising Boys a few years ago, someone called Steve Biddulph, but there's an age at which, probably teenage age, when the best thing for your sons is to have probably people around their dad's age or even younger, a group of men almost that step on from them, who they almost can be kind of their mentors. They're surrounded with, so not too far on from their journey, but people they can surround themselves with, that they can learn from, they can spend time probably making things, doing stuff. And it just got me thinking about that idea of having many fathers, you know. In a healthy church, you might be able to say, I have many fathers in this church, you know. There are many people who in different ways I'm able to look up to, talk to, be vulnerable with, pray with, sing badly with, like many fathers thing. And so whenever I think about the picture of a demoralized man, they may well probably quite easily think about a dad who's maybe just a little bit bored with the humdrum of life, but maybe they haven't stepped into that role of fathering that next generation down, and maybe they're doing an all right job as a dad and as a husband, but they're not doing much more than that. I think that sense of purpose and you talked about this earlier, about there's people ahead of us that almost we probably have a bit of a hunger in I sort of perceived you to be saying that I want to receive their wisdom. I want to learn from those in a generation ahead of us. Of course, any man should do and ought to want that. And so there's this kind of many different generations, many fathers. And so a demoralized man, I suppose, is someone who is in a lane, probably, I don't know, perhaps just selfishness has caught hold of them, or a lack of seeing the bigger picture. But I think the opposite is easier to think of, isn't it? Someone who is full of purpose, who's willing to invest in others, who's willing to learn from the older generation, who's willing to invest in the younger generation. I certainly think
it's good you use that word purpose, because that was what I was going to bring up.
And then I think about the church context we're in is kind of interesting, because we've got a lot of young families, and we've got slightly younger kids, but there aren't many teenagers yet, but there's a few. And this sort of stuff of having good role models just generally, other than just your dad, but you need like a group of people around you, I think will become more important as our sort of church, the kids get older in our church, and especially as the boys and the girls go into those teenage years and start to become more independent. So those would be my reflections.
I think one of the things that teenagers, well, first of all, there is no concept of a teenager in the Bible. There is a son, there is a boy, a child, and then there's a man. I think it's really fascinating that the Jews, they just have a bar mitzvah at 13. A man. You're a man in training, you're a man. And it's again, is it one or the other? Well, it's both. Do you affirm a man when he's ready, or do you affirm a man in order for him to get the kickstart he needs in order to be ready? The latter is absolutely essential, and yet the expectation should be, Father, you have been raising your boy in order that he doesn't dishonor you, doesn't disgrace you, and he at the age of 13 is already clearly on the road to be a man. I was once told a really, I just said it totally off cuff, but it was such a poignant point, that he said that the job of a father, amongst myriad other functions, is to tell his kids, sons and daughters, there is a corner of the cosmos made for you. He gave you specific desires, passions. He's put experiences in your way. He's given you particular tools. You need to go and make into Eden. There's a chaotic, disordered wasteland out there, thanks to the fall. And it's not going to cooperate with you. And you're going to have to manhandle it and pray and dig and build and pray some more and sacrifice to fulfill that which God has called you to do. And we talk a lot about the next generation and masculinity, but it's not to keep the kids at home. Part of our, maybe, dare I say, this is where mothering can cross a boundary. It can go too far to one extreme, where the mothering instinct wants to protect and keep the kids at home, and the father actually, a little bit like with the umbilical cord, something far greater going on there than we appreciate, is to actually say, no, I'm going to have to cut here. We're going to have to create a separation. We don't look at the natural world and primitive societies for a source of truth, but we can see reflections of, again, being made in the image of God and God's law and the way that it works its way out in different cultures. Pretty much every native culture that I've examined, and I'm not on massive in-depth studies into anthropology, but a fair few, and there are always rites of passage. There's always rites of manhood, and it might have been with you and it might have been with Joe. I made the point that women don't necessarily need a deliberate rite of passage because something happens to them.
Right.
It doesn't mean that a father can't and couldn't take his daughter out for like a daddy day and whatever. But something happens to them that's biologically, physiologically very different to a boy.
Yeah.
And you hear the term man-child, and this, manner of other sorts of insults, the idea of a boy living in his mum's basement, which frankly these days with house prices could be a wise move. But the idea being that he's just not grown up. He's not crossed the boundary. And it's this implication that we've got that we make. He should have moved on. There was something that he should have done. He should have left something and moved to something else. And we just can't put a finger onto it because we're a culture that's lost its poetry and its mythos. We're a demoralized culture. We're intimidated by terrorists and immigrants. It's just, we touched on immigrants last week, but I'm just done with a culture that is scared of immigrants. It's anyway, the idea being that boys do need a Rubicon. Boys need to cross a point of no return. You could have a whole Netflix series and films dealing with this kind of existential moment where, son, you're now called into manhood by other men. And it's interesting you raise the point of a group of men because, the father is the head of his household. The father will ultimately be held responsible for his children and his wife. Buck stops with you, pal. That's your family, that's your household. But there is utility, there is encouragement, there is benefit, there is support, there is love, there is practical benefit as well, just in terms of work experience and financial aid in having a community around you of like-minded men who can step in and support a father and support a son, and show him the road, show him the way he should go.
Yeah.
Fathers aren't in total isolation from grandparents, but that, going back to the point I was making about saying to your children, there's a corner of the universe that's got your name on it. It's got your job description. And the point I make there is because our job really should be preparing our children, mothers and fathers, but we're talking about fathers, okay? Preparing our kids to send them out, go and do as much godly and righteous damage and build as much good and righteous things that will endure, Lord willing, forever. Do as much damage to the kingdom of darkness as possible. And if that means that my kids move to Japan, all right, I've got to be at peace with that, because the nuclear family is the well, you know how to preface this. I think I'm right. If I'm not, correct me. But the nuclear family, man and woman together is the unit of God's kingdom, civilization. It isn't the extended family. It isn't the clan. It isn't the tribe. It isn't the nation. So when parents want to get in the way of God calling out a young man and his bride, and getting in the way because it's a few hours drive away, or it's a plane ride away, or we're not going to see you every weekend, or whatever, it goes back to this idea of mission. That part of my mission as a father is preparing my kids for mission. And part of a boy's mission is getting ready to step up and lead a household. Yeah. And being able to equip and encourage and supply and lead others in their missions. And that's hard work. And it also takes a very different mindset, because pagans naturally will revert to a static mindset. The idea that you would send your kids out into the universe, that's like a Hail Mary pass, in the 10 minutes of the game. Why would you do that? We've got everything we need here. We need to consolidate. And yet God says, actually, son leaves his mother and father, cleaves to his wife. That's a new family. And so there's a dynamic going on there where part of my mission, I'm trying not to repeat myself, but part of my mission is preparing the next generation for mission, whilst also straddling the now and the future, looking back at the past for the things that it can give me, but resolutely looking forward. And if I'm demoralized, I can't make sense of the past because I'm a rootless bastard. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I come from. I also don't really know who I am now. And I don't really know where I am. I can't make sense of the world. I don't know. He's never put his hand on my shoulder and said, son, look at the stars. This is who you are. This is what you're going to do. This is what I do. And I can't make sense of the future because what's the future? What have I got to build? So if I'm not incorporated into a greater mission, all of my potential is just happening.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had conversations kind of circle around on a few different themes, because this idea of this rite of passage.
Is that because it's 9:30 p.m. or we're exhausted, or is that because it's
possibly, that's
tapping into the mysteries of the universe?
We should just do 10 minutes and then just loop that as a podcast. No, this idea of ritual, and like you were saying about age 13 and this rite of passage for a man, and actually send me anything if you've got anything on it, because what I'd really love to know is what different cultures, obviously Christians, do, or the Jewish ritual is in more detail in terms of what's said and how is that kind of permission given to that son. I'd love to read anything you've got any links on it, but it's kind of almost circled around this idea of having things in place, like at certain ages or times of the year or in our worship, that draw us to the bigger picture, like the song that God's singing, like you said, over creation or whatever. Is all this idea that if we have things in place, that sets the scene for our lives and what our lives are about. It gives everything meaning, and it gives us the environment in which we live and the reminders of God in our day-to-day life, in our years, in our months, in the seasons, and how the world around us changes, and in the different ages and rites of passage and all these things, and this whole idea of almost ritual and liturgy and things that remind us of God. I think it's almost kind of circled around that, which I think is quite interesting. But yeah, I'd love to hear anything on the rite of passage, because as my boys get older, this has come up in a few podcasts and things, this whole idea of giving them this rite of passage for them. And you're a man now, and I don't know what that looks like, but I want to know what it looks like, because I kind of want to do it. So if you've got, I'd love to think about that more, or you to send me anything on it, because
we can't really do that in isolation from one another, because you're just a few years ahead of me. I mean, Judah's what, 7? Jacob's nearly 5.
Nearly 6, 7.
Judah. How old is Judah?
He's 6.
Wow. Okay. Big 6-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, we're literally within spitting distance of one another and needing to go through that. So that's It's amazing, isn't it? Just like spontaneous conversations like this.
Yeah.
That's a genuine project that's needed, that this podcast needs to do, is
Okay.
at least have a skeleton framework of principles so that each, each unique geography, each unique culture. I mean, part of my son's upbringing will be, bilingual. You have a shared heritage of your Germanic culture. Part of like the personal homeschooling for our family will kind of be, you bear no guilt and no shame for what these people did. But
right.
The tribe, the German tribe, if you will, Germanic peoples, committed terrible atrocities. And your great grandfather was covenantally bound to them, fought in the Wehrmacht. That's,
wow.
You want to talk about covenantal blessings and curses in Deuteronomy 28 in another podcast episode, I'd be happy to do so. But, part of it for our family will be me as a father trying to very sensitively say, your mother's ancestors, again, your mother bears no guilt and no shame for this.
Mm.
Happened. And that's almost like family lessons. That's where I think, knowing your heritage and knowing where you come from, there is some utility in that. There's real danger in getting glued in the past and thinking that, because, you're a white Nordic Scandinavian, that therefore that means anything. Well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it just means that you're 6'5" and you're blonde. I don't know. There's a real resurgence of paganism, proper paganism that we're trying to resurrect as a counterfeit, because people just don't know who they are. People want to have cultural meaning. They want to have an identity that's rooted in something bigger than themselves, that's rooted to a wider collective, because again, the unbeliever can't make sense of individuality without God. I was meditating on that today, actually, and it's interesting you bring up masculinity, because I see one of the very wicked pagan temptations that's gripping a niche minority of young men is this desire to be a savage, barbarian, almost literally like a pre-Christian Norse killing machine, and connect that with stuff like inteldom, which I did a research paper on recently as part of a CPD project, involuntary celibate people. I mean, this really is a fire hose. We'll probably leave that for another time, but what I will say is that this general trend of masculine subcultures, it goes in two directions. It either goes towards passivity, or it goes towards way too excessive, activity, being too active to establish something and build something, being extremely aggressive in terms of we're in a combative sort of society against women, block capitals, collective. I am in competition and combat against woman, and therefore, pick up artists and notch the bedpost and sleep with loads of them and treat them awfully, or never marry because, there are genuine problems with the family law system, with shared alimony and stuff like that. I'm not trying to make light of that, but there is a real theological trend towards hatred of women and this perceived war of the sexes. And again, I've got my Wellington boots on. I'm wading in and I'm saying, these are just rootless bastards fighting each other. It's literally just an all-out scrap, a melee against one another. And there's the puppet master above just having this nasty cackling laugh because he's just managed to remove people from their birthright and their inheritance and their relationship with their Heavenly Father. And he's managed to redirect them to destroy everything that their ancestors built, much of which might have been worth tearing down, and God is sovereign over it all. The devil's a dog on a leash. But I just can't help but wonder that so much of this aggression and violence and combative attitude between male and female is ultimately at its root is demonic. It isn't of God. It isn't of God that a young boy should grow up to think that all women are evil and hate them and not want to marry them. And there's plenty of women that I wouldn't want to marry. I mean, will never marry another one. But if I was advising a young man who was looking to court a woman, my instinctive advice wouldn't be never trust them. It would kind of be like, find a Proverbs 31 woman, or one who's got potential to become that. Find a good one. God's pretty scathing about both boys and girls, men and women in the Bible. And there's another podcast episode. How do you help a young boy who's looking to find a good pal? Well, at the moment, we're probably talking about the idea of how to fix a demoralized boy. So
right,
it's almost like women aren't even in the picture at the minute.
Yeah, goodness me. Well, this sounds like another one. Can we do a good one? Can we talk about femininity? I think we can try and do that in an interesting way, because I think,
what we should do is we need to get babysitters and have your wife and my wife on the mic. And we'll just sit at the side and just be like, yeah. They just have the their own show going on talking about femininity.
You've come in at an interesting angle there about. You've come in it with some interesting things that I've seen, like that in the whole involuntary celibate thing. Some guys, and you come in at an angle of almost. And my angle I think about often is, the whole idea that women have been emancipated from things of the past, even from emancipated from motherhood, is a big thing in society. Have they really been emancipated? And that would be my angle on it. So we could talk about it.
The answer is obviously no, isn't it? But
obviously, absolutely.
It's not really sufficient to just be like, no.
No, that's it. Tick.
Yeah, because like with all of these things, we've got to acknowledge that there's the wheat and the tares, the wheat and the weeds, they grow together, so there is good stuff and there is bad stuff all the time going through, and God waits until his moment, thresh it, harvest the wheat, and get rid of the weeds. And so there's this constant cultural and civilizational renewal going on literally every day, where God is shaking the things that cannot be shaken, that can be shaken, so that those things that cannot be shaken remain. And if we're not mindful of these macro trends, if you will, like enlightened thinking, which has spawned nationalism, just racism, evolutionism, every horrible ism. And you could throw eugenics in there as well, which is just an offshoot. You've got this disgusting family tree of, evolution, and we've got eugenics further downstream, and horrific racism. And if not conscious of those macro trends, then we just fight the wrong enemy. We start taking the axe to a thick branch and not the trunk, and we don't rip out the roots. And I have no beef whatsoever with people who have suffered real pain and trauma at the hands of men and or women, and have therefore had their perspective radically altered by pain and trauma, real experience. No beef whatsoever. It's like people in the special needs community who come to me and say, well, how could I do this? It's like, you know what? Let's buy a coffee and I'll tell you exactly how, I can't swear on the podcast, but exactly how rubbish I felt at times, my experience. Let's share stories, and I'll help you realize that the only way you can make sense of it is by understanding that God is the king of over all things. And that he holds your little girl, your little son in the palm of his hand, and he makes sense of pain. Otherwise, it's all meaningless. That's just a bumper sticker, on the back of my car. It's like that big. Is the problem of evil. There is no problem, there is no such thing as evil without God. that sucks. But let's talk about the alternative. And when the either by accident or by design, the enemy sends, it's non-enemies. It's almost like sending non-combatants. They're holding a rifle. They're a non-combatant. And they just run onto the battlefield. And I'm just like, I'm not here for you. I understand why you're frustrated and why, you've latched onto feminism. The church hasn't given you a good witness of what godly femininity and godly masculinity is. You're not off the hook. You've got to repent, and believe on Christ, but you need to probably understand what that means. And at the moment, we've just got all of these straw men all over the place and all of these misunderstandings. We're fighting the wrong enemy, left, right, and center. And we're perpetuating these culture wars. And I'm just like, it's just really dumb. Can we please just settle on what the real problem is and figure out, fences around which this discussion is going to be had, that we're just not nasty to one another. I mean, if people are nasty, that maybe we're just patient with them and love them and let words wash over us, even if they really hurt.
Some really wise words.
Before an incel, just goes and shoots a kid in Plymouth. Like, how about that? That was some pretty dark and disturbing stuff to read. And that kid is absolutely 100% responsible for what he did. There is no but here. I'm not trying to make light of anything that he did. I'm absolutely disgusted. You dig deeper into his story. He is one of many. No father. Mother that he claimed emotionally and mentally abused him. And you just think, are we going to perpetuate just this?
Yeah, sure.
Almost like mindless prison violence, or are we going to just try and figure out on a wider level how to reform the system from the root up?
Yeah.
Because we've already scratched the very top surface of how deep and intertwined and embedded masculinity is. The idea that you need community, you cannot divorce certain functions of masculinity away from each other. They are distinct and yet together. In order to avoid having this grotesque, deformed masculinity that gets out of joint and it starts doing weird things. I can't help but feel that the church has to be showing that cultural leadership by first of all identifying the right enemy, glorifying God by fighting that enemy, glorifying God by demonstrating as well as we can the correct alternative, and glorifying God by trusting him in refusing to fight certain enemies. We preach a comprehensive gospel of God. That does not just mean Jesus died for you, here's your ticket to heaven, now just sit tight, don't do anything. We've got a whole reformation work to do. Our civilization is crumbling. And it's probably, just my words here, it's not worth saving as it was. There's a reason why it's crumbling. God's shaking it. Yeah. So we have to cooperate with what God's doing. And one of the things that he is doing is he's ripping back all of these facades and false understandings and ideologies and idols about sexuality that we've had. And I have no conclusion yet to that.
Yeah.
I can, here I am, a 27-year-old bloke. I don't have the answers to problems that the universe has, but I do hope I could sit with a radical feminist for half an hour and give her the gospel in a way that she understands with practical life-changing outcome for her, that she realizes that her pain is not definite, her frustration is not final. She comes to know the personal designer, creator, the one who made her that way. And that even though every man is not every man is going to be ideal, not every man is going to depict God in the way that he needs to be depicted and glorified. This is a one-woman game. It's a one-man game. You've got yours, I've got mine. Find the right one and just get on with building the alternative God's commanded us to build.
It's good. I feel like we've gone into. I feel like we might be going into like recording another podcast episode now.
Yeah, man. I'm riffing on. I'm running on fumes now. I'm very tired.
My brain is going. This is good stuff, but I haven't got much more to say other than this has been really good, and I know I need to sleep soon.
What I love about I will say this, Tom. What I love about podcasts is that you and I can have a rambling discussion. You know, we're talking about, we love walk, we love just. It's basically what we've done, and may there be many more, because that is really the crucible. It's the anvil upon which we work stuff out. We're there together, you know, just kind of sharpening iron at the workbench. What do you think about this? It's like, really, really not sure. I know this is what it needs to be. Right now, I just know that I shouldn't do that. So, yeah, show notes are going to be fun. All right, mate. Well, God bless you. May the peace of Christ be upon you and your family as you're going away over these next 2 days, and sleep well. And we'll touch base next week, eh?
You too.
All right, mate.
I missed some of that. I'm sure it was good because it cracked up a little bit.
All right. Well, every blessing on you and your wife and your family, mate, as you're traveling. And these two exhausted fathers will reconvene next Monday. All right. Peace, brother. All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, mate.